Hey YouTube, Alex here, and I'm at Hat Yai City Park in Hat Yai, Thailand. And I wanted to make a video because I keep getting asked about this, and I think it's really going to be valuable for a lot of you. How much do I personally need for financial independence in Southeast Asia? This is by no means an exhaustive list. This video is not financial advice. As for how much you need, that really depends on your lifestyle preferences. I'm a bachelor with limited expenses back home. You may be responsible for paying child support back in the West. You may have a mortgage payment. You may have other kinds of obligations like having a family. And if you're attempting to bring a family to this part of the world, then your budget is going to look different from mine. In my case, I'm just paying for myself. This is not an exhaustive list. This is not a forever list. Inflation is a worldwide phenomena. Things can change. This idea assumes that my base level cost of living in Southeast Asia multiplied by the inflation rate will not exceed the rise in my income in the West. So what is my FIRE number for Southeast Asia? That is a dividend paying portfolio with a value of 500K at a 4% safe withdrawal yield. Now, 4% of $500,000 is $20,000. This would create a monthly income of around $1,600 US per month, a little bit more than that. And that's not my monthly expenses, that is just my income. My budget would probably look closer to say $1,200 per month, maybe $1,400 per month. This would allow for saving some extra capital to cover unexpected expenses, to cover the cost of replacing batteries in my phone and laptop, to eventually needing to replace my phone and laptop, deal with any unexpected healthcare expenses. This is just the baseline. What does this $1,200 per month of expenses include? Well, I would say the rent and the electricity combined should not exceed $300, maybe $350, and my food budget would not exceed, say, $500, maybe $550. Now that does include a lot of Western food. I do at times enjoy a nice pizza, or sometimes I like to go have Indian food or some sushi, and that's going to run more than local dishes. On top of that, I throw a $100 transportation budget and $100 for visas. You might be thinking that's $1,000 to $1,050 per month. Well, I also budget in there that I'm going to run into anywhere from $100 to $150 per month of unexpected expenses. This doesn't include health insurance because I currently self-insure. I would probably attempt to get a work permit, a visa in the country that I'm staying in long term that allows me to do some things on the side, whether it be working online or maybe teaching English. This is not, oh, now I've got my $1,600 per month, I'm just gonna sit on the couch and do nothing. So now that we've talked about the dividend portfolio and the monthly income, what are my 5 points that I'm going to be following to maintain success? Number 1 is that I'm taking a look at small to medium-sized cities. I'm not looking as closely at the large capitals. I find that they will probably exceed my budget when considering the rent in a convenient district or all of the potential expenses that you have in a big city. I don't find big cities inherently expensive as much as I find them to be incredibly easy places to spend money. You have lots and lots of opportunities to spend money. That's why I find them to be more expensive. Certainly, rent is not cheap in Bangkok city center, but you can easily find $100 a month apartments on the outskirts. You go far enough out of Manila, it's the same deal. You look at Steve from Philippines Info Channel. He's in Trece Martirez City and he's paying, I think, $80 equivalent for his rent. I'm from a medium-sized city in the US, Nashville, and so I find that the medium or small cities are more in line with what I'm accustomed to. The traffic is not as bad as it is in the capital cities. The people are perhaps a bit less rushed or in a hurry. I think it tends to be easier to get out of the tourist bubble. And this is the same reason I wouldn't be picking islands or beaches at that price point. These areas also tend to be pricey, comparable to the big cities. And there's nothing wrong with them. I think beaches and islands are just fine. But if you're a budget conscious person, and especially budget conscious person, then I don't think the big cities or the beaches are going to offer the same price points that the small to medium cities will offer. The beaches and islands tend to not offer the same economies of scale that the small to medium-sized cities offer. They're serving a smaller number of people, and so the prices have to be higher to accommodate that, not to mention the higher transportation costs. I personally am a big fan of Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I think that's in the running for my long-term home in Southeast Asia. I do recommend doing discovery trips to check out different places and find what's going to work best for you. If you want me to cover discovery trips, let me know down in the comments below and I'll do a rough outline of what a discovery trip should look like. But that topic is so deep, I've also thought about writing a book about it. Consider your healthcare needs. Now, if you're in perfectly good health, this won't apply to you, but as you get older, you may run into chronic health issues. I have some health issues myself, and I budget a certain amount of money per month to address these healthcare concerns. I'd say probably I set aside like $100 a month, something like that. I do recommend checking out travel insurance providers. I am not currently partnered with one, but if you know a good one that you recommend, let us know down in the comments and I'll be happy to check out their services. I prefer a testimonial or something where you can vouch for them, and there's a number of people who are saying, yeah, I've had a good experience with this provider. But this is especially important if you plan to ride a motorbike. I personally do not ride a motorbike, and that's why the budget is not quite so high, but unfortunately accidents do happen. You see, I think she's a woman of European origin who recently had a motorbike accident in Phuket and she didn't have insurance, and I think she's got like a GoFundMe to attempt to raise the funds to cover the costs for treatment. So I would say be very, very careful about planning financially for emergency situations. You should also be seeing healthcare providers on a fairly consistent basis to try to preemptively catch anything before it gets more severe. A friend of mine who watches this channel, a lovely person, mentioned that he recently had a serious health concern come up because he was regularly getting checkups and they caught it early, and as a result he is still with us today, and I feel very happy and grateful that he is addressing these concerns early, and I hope that you will do the same. It's not just the catching them early, it's also making sure that you can budget to catch them early. And this is where I would say, let's say you have an income of $2,000 per month. Well, you shouldn't really be spending $2,000 per month. You should really keep your budget lower than that. Create a fund alongside your health insurance to be prepared for these costs before they happen. And even more so if you're riding a motorbike, which I don't recommend, but certainly some people feel that they can handle it. Some places have had issues with foreigners failing to pay, and so they are especially concerned about that and can expect payment up front. If you're not in a position to handle it, then that's where insurance can step in and allow for your admittance. I'm not going to get into tons of details on this one just because I haven't had that circumstance myself. It's certainly something I'm going to be more cautious about as I get older and my health deteriorates with age. What are your lifestyle expectations? Do you expect to be eating Western food every day? Do you expect to be jet setting to other parts of the country? Do you want to be partying, enjoying the nightlife scene? All of these can cost a lot and really add to your budget. And so if these are things that you want to participate in on a consistent basis, you'll want to budget extra for this. For me personally, I'm not a nightlife guy, I'm not a jet setter, and I'm not as much of a traveler. I like to do slow travels. These are not as large of a budget concern for me, but they may be a concern for you. If you want to be eating Western food every day, then consider that it could cost you as much as it costs in your home country, if not more. To import Australian beef to Thailand is not cheap, and being so far from production, you can't expect to get the same kind of deals or discounts that you would in your home country. Likewise, if you want to have salmon imported from Norway, then that's going to cost as well. You're not going to get that much of a discount. In some cases, I've found some things to be more expensive, but often they're at least as expensive. In the case of cheese, cheese is much more expensive in Thailand than it is in a Western country because cheese is considered a luxury, it's considered a niche product, and not everybody's eating cheese, so they don't have the same economies of scale. It's also expensive to store cheese. There's also a limited domestic market for it, so that's one of those things where you're so used to it being fairly economical in the West, but when you are in Southeast Asia, it could cost you a pretty penny. Also consider that if you meet a significant other in Southeast Asia and you want her or him to join you on your travels, then you're going to pay extra for them to be joining you. Instead of buying one plane ticket, you're going to be purchasing two. Instead of buying one dinner, you're going to be purchasing two. Now, some guys will date a woman who has a career, and I think that's perfectly fine, but that's not going to be the case for every guy, and you need to consider that. And if she does have a career, then that will somewhat limit your vacation options. If he or she is working Monday through Friday, they might not always have the energy to run off to an island. They may want to just chill out on the weekends. I know for me, when I'm working full time, I don't always want to be traveling every weekend. Now, when I was younger, maybe I had the energy for that, but as I've gotten older, I prefer a more relaxed pace. Speaking of relationships, dating will add to your budget, not just the actual partnership, but finding somebody that you are interested in. If you want to live in a certain city, then you'll want to start there. I don't like the idea of trying to meet somebody online and then you want to live in Chiang Mai, but you're talking to women in Phuket. That's going to involve a lot more legwork. Are you going to move to Phuket? Are you going to help them move to Chiang Mai? What if things don't work out? Are you going to help them move back to Phuket? And if you move to Phuket and you don't want to live there, you're going to be making a lot of compromises that may cause some friction in your relationship. I'm personally not a big beach guy, so Phuket is not what I'm looking for, but it is a wonderful place for many people. You should also consider, for people who are dating a significant other that has a child from a previous relationship, are you able to afford that? Can you provide for not only your SO, but also their child? Are you able to consider their pre-existing obligations, whether it be to their parents or to their child or their ex-significant other? In the case of the Philippines, if you are a guy who is dating somebody who is married, well, divorce is illegal in the Philippines. Are you capable of helping to fund an annulment? This is a very expensive and time-consuming process. I am not an attorney. However, I've heard this from plenty of guys who say this is something you need to look out for or need to consider. You really have to be cautious there and understand if you want to do things legally, then it can be quite expensive in this scenario. Adultery is a serious crime in the Philippines. It is a jailable offense, and you don't want to be in that position. This is another circumstance where I think it's important to consider the needs of your potential significant other, because if you have a family, then the grandparents are probably going to want to be involved, and are you open to budgeting the time and money to make that happen? Finally, this is just a start. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. You should also, of course, have the emergency budget. This is going to be different for everyone. I personally recommend a minimum of 10 to 20K. You should also include a repatriation budget. This is if your plan goes awry. Unfortunately, it does happen. For me, a repatriation budget includes the expenses to get back to my home country, a one-way flight back to the US, and 3 to 6 months of living expenses, a deposit on an apartment, first month's rent, and then money to pay for rent, food, and transportation for 3 to 6 months after I land. It is not only the funds that I need just to get back, because, okay, yeah, I'm back in the States, where am I going to stay? I prefer not to stay at a homeless shelter. I would prefer to rent a studio or a room from a friend, and that costs money. I already own a car back in the States, so transportation is not going to be as high for me. But if you're going back and having to buy a car, then that transportation budget should be higher. It may not even be an emergency that sends you back. You may just get tired of living overseas. You may miss your friends and family back home. Your business may require your in-person intervention. There's all kinds of reasons why people move back home, and you want to be prepared in case you are also in that position. If you are in a position where you totally run out of money, the US government, assuming you're an American, I don't believe this is the case for UK residents or Canadians, but that the US government will give you a repatriation loan. They will loan you the money to buy a plane ticket back, assuming you sit down and try to call. I think it's 3 contacts that you need to contact, maybe it's 2 contacts, and check with them like, hey, I'm in a rough spot, can you loan me the money to buy a ticket? If they don't answer or they say no, then the US government will let you go back on a repat loan, but they are going to hold your passport until you pay that loan back in full. Now, if you run out of money, you probably shouldn't be looking to get out of the US immediately anyway. You don't want to run into that situation in the first place, so have a repatriation budget, have an emergency budget, be prepared to go back if things don't work out. I hope this video has been helpful. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Do you agree that these are reasonable considerations? Are there any topics that you'd add to this video? It helps to generate interesting discussion if we're able to share ideas, compare and contrast our thought processes. And if you enjoy the video, give us a thumbs up. If you don't enjoy it, give us a thumbs down. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, subscribe down below. It is free to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.